Good afternoon, everyone. So before I get into discussing the research that I have found on my particular topic of human behavior, I'd like for you guys to do a little activity with me. So to begin, if you would take a moment and visualize what you consider to be a typical representation of homeless veterans in the United States. Then I'd like for you to be a little self-critical and ask yourself why this was your representation. So most of you are probably developing a picture of an older man, probably in his 50s or 60s, and he's probably either white or African American. This is but not by any means a wrong representation. However, if this was your initial thought, you would be among those who hold the average response to this question. However, times have changed considerably as the military has opened its ranks to more diverse populations. In fact, women are quickly becoming the fastest growing subpopulation of homeless veterans in this country and are often considered the invisible face of veteran homelessness. In a 2017 point-in-time count, the Department of Housing and Urban Development determined that nearly 40,000 veterans were homeless on that given night, and 9% of that population was made up of women. The most likely age of women veterans to be homeless is between the ages of 19 and 29 years. And this is a particularly striking statistic for me because I am well within that age range at 26 myself, as well as being so heavily integrated into the military lifestyle. That age range is very important for development into adulthood. It's a time when women are developing themselves professionally, as well as probably building families. And as the number of women veterans is increasing among the homeless population, it is important to understand the factors that increase their risk of becoming homeless, as well as those that contribute to the maintenance of their homeless status. Because many of these contributing factors often begin during their time in service. So, for instance, women in the military are more likely to experience gender-specific trauma like sexual assault or rape, which is referred to as MST or military sexual trauma. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, 1 in 4 women will experience MST during their time in service. These incidences of MST also increase during combat and times of conflict and high stress, and this is especially relevant now that women are no longer restricted from combat jobs. And because of these increases in the likelihood of female veterans experiencing traumatic events, many women in the military are developing and subsequently being diagnosed with PTSD, which is post-traumatic stress disorder, along with other mental, behavior, and physical health issues. These issues range anywhere from anxiety, depression, substance abuse disorders, chronic pain disorders, and those issues related to physical injury, which is, of course, very common among the military population, especially those in combat. According to the Department of Veterans Affairs, women are more than twice as likely to develop PTSD compared to men. And together, such conditions lead to the inability to maintain a stable job after their time in service, which then increases their risk of homelessness. Another contributing factor is that, in general, veterans are less likely to seek early intervention for treatment or medical needs. And this is because the military is an organization that is built on the foundations of masculinity, strength, and self-sacrifice. So seeking help often causes internal and external conflict for veterans. This is especially so for women who have had to work even harder to assimilate into the military culture. Women are also more likely to internalize their behaviors. Thus, seeking help would prove their perceived inherent weaknesses compared to their male counterparts, thus exacerbating any symptoms that they may be experiencing. This is especially important for social workers to understand because many females who do seek help, either through the VA or other organizations tailored to military issues, find that their needs go unmet due to a general lack of gender-based services, which can include female-only support groups and women's health services. And this reduces the likelihood of them seeking other services. Of course, there is a lot of evidence that suggests that the longer a problem is inadequately treated, the harder it will be to treat in the long run. For instance, one example that I came across during my research, many female veterans reported that they had experienced MST during their time in service or thereafter, and were unable to get help or were unable to feel helped because the provider of their services did not have women's only support groups for military sexual trauma. And it can, of course, be a very sensitive topic to discuss in a male-female setting. So there was conflict there, that they did not feel like they were getting the services they needed. This problem and many others faced by homeless female veterans is congruent with the conflict perspective of human behavior that we have discussed over the course of this class, and is a recurring theme throughout my discussion. Another major contributor to homelessness in female veterans is the conflict between their careers in the military, and their integration into the civilian workforce. Many times female veterans, especially those who are disabled, find themselves lacking in job skills that can translate to a job after their military separation. And this is also especially important for those who are disabled because they may not have the same abilities that they once did. And this leads to the likelihood of these women having to work low wage and low skilled jobs. And many female veterans, especially those who are homeless, face the added factor of providing for their children under these unstable circumstances. Often the inability to find affordable childcare prevents these women from finding better jobs, which keeps them within the cycle of homelessness, which can then lead to chronic homelessness. And that is a particularly difficult circumstance to deal with when you have children. It is important for the field of social work to address this problem through services like vocational rehab, job training, and other job supportive tools, which could include providing a means of affordable childcare. And without adequate income, homeless female veterans are also likely to face insecurities in reliable transportation. Ways to address this could include providing discounted or free local transit passes, like bus passes, things like that, as well as funds to allow them to ride share to their place of employment until they can obtain a more reliable source. Even though women veterans are increasing in numbers among the homeless population, they are, of course, not the only ones who are at risk. Gender, age, race, and sexuality are all highly correlated predictors of homelessness in veterans. So considering that most of the military and its veterans are male, it makes sense that the majority of those that are facing or suffering from homeless are also male. While younger women are more at risk, the opposite is true of men. In 2012, men between the ages of 45 and 54 years made up 41% of the homeless veteran population. And it is speculated that this age difference is because prior to this, men are more able-bodied, more likely to be hired for, highly labored jobs. And of course, as the older they get, the less able they are to do this, increasing their risk of homelessness and job insecurities. And though most of the veteran population are both white and male, nearly half of the homeless veteran population, approximately 48%, are African American or Hispanic, even though these ethnic groups only account for less than 15% of the entire veteran population. With that being said, it is pretty clear that the veteran homelessness disproportionately affects people of color. In fact, African American women between the ages of 19 and 29 are considered to be the most at-risk population for veteran homelessness. Another subpopulation for veteran homeless at increased risk of veteran homelessness is the LGBTQ community, especially those that identify as transgendered. So legislation under the current Trump administration has made being transgendered especially difficult in the military, even though in 2014 it was estimated that nearly 150,000 transgendered people were currently serving or had previously served in the military. This community faces many obstacles that lead to homelessness, including high rates of mental health issues, high rates of diagnoses of HIV or AIDS, and overt job discrimination, which of course makes getting and keeping a job particularly difficult. So social workers have unique abilities to care for populations like homeless female veterans, as it is our goal to identify and challenge means of oppression, injustice, and inequality. Though for this assignment, I chose the conflict perspective as the most beneficial lens with which to view this type of human behavior. It is vital to social work practice to understand that supporting populations like homeless female veterans requires the integration of numerous perspectives to truly develop our understanding of and ability to care for such populations. And that pretty much concludes some of the research that I have gathered on this topic. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to address them. So thanks for listening and participating in my little activity.